How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Masters of Horror. This is Season 1, Episode 4, and this one's entitled Jenifer. This originally came out November 18th, 2005, and was directed by Italian horror legend Dario Argento. You guys may know him for a ton of his movies, but think things like Suspiria, Inferno, Deep Red, and probably my personal favorite, Phenomenon. Lots of good stuff. Definitely go check him out, and cool to see him in this series. This episode stars Steven Weber, and as the titular Jenifer, Carrie and Fleming. Now, it's also noteworthy that Steven Weber wrote the teleplay for this episode, so that's kind of cool. And also, Mick Garris, who produced the show, Steven Weber and Mick Garris worked together on the TV miniseries of The Shining, so they had an establishment before this. This is actually also based on a comic book, a short story that appeared in Creepy magazine, so that's cool to use a comic source material. I know Masters of Horror uses short stories all the time, so cool to see a comic book. Anyway, this is probably one of the better known episodes of the series. I feel that when you talk about Masters of Horror, Jenifer is one that people do tend to think about, but it is a very strange episode to say the least. And I know that it means something. I know that there's something there. There's some substance. But what that is, I don't know. The thing is, it talks about several things. Relationships, destructive habits, abuse, even kind of telling a Frankenstein story at one point. There's lots of elements, and you can tell there's something there. But I don't really know 100% what it's going for. But it's one that you can think about a lot. Actually, last time I watched this episode, I watched it with someone and we were talking afterwards about various elements, what that could be or this, or comparing it to real life stuff. And part of me likes that there's no clean one-to-one explanation for this episode, but it is really bizarre. I mean, it's also one that really does swing for it. Greg Nicotero, who would later work on The Walking Dead, did the special effects makeup for this series, and boy, he has his time to shine in this episode. There's some absolutely graphic moments, and there's of course also a sexual side to this episode, and both elements get pushed a little farther than you would think. This is on cable after all, and also the story goes just a little farther and a little more than you think. There's this whole bit at the end where I'm like, whoa, I think a normal story would have ended by now. Where the heck are we going? Overall, I think I've seen this episode like 3 times. One, when I initially watched a lot of episodes from this show. Then I watched it again once I knew who Argento was and I was kind of getting big into his stuff. And then I watched it again now, and despite having seen it 3 times, it's one that there's something to latch onto. It is good, it's strange, and I have no idea what it's supposed to be, but it is something to think about. I guess let's talk in a little bit more specifics. I'm going to talk a bit about the plot. I won't do any major spoilers, but I do want to take a moment, break down and analyze this, so no major spoilers, but let's do a deeper analysis. We open up with 2 cops eating chow mein in their police car, and there's a fun little bit of humor with them trying to swat a fly and constantly missing it. But one of the cops gets out, hears a commotion, and goes down to the river where there's a madman with a hatchet about to murder a blonde girl. He shoots the man says the name Jenifer, and then he dies. And then the blonde girl hugs him, but he sees that she has a disfigured face, and he's kind of left there in shock with a dead man there and a disfigured woman clasping him. Quite the striking image, quite the striking opening, and yeah, that's gonna get you hooked. That's a good hook. Well, he later finds out that there's a bit of a mystery, like the last guy there was something with him, like he was a respected citizen, but how did he go about here? And I wish there was more of the mystery unfurling element. I mean, we do get what happened, especially as we go farther on in this episode, but you kind of forget he's a cop the farther you go on into this, and I don't know, maybe if this was a little longer, we would get a better unfolding. Whatever. He goes home and he tells his wife that he had to kill someone today, and it's the first time he ever had to do that. And we get a moment, where, let's just say you can see their relationship is pretty healthy until intrusive memories ruin the moment. And that's when he thinks of Jenifer, and he finds out she's in this relatively poorly managed asylum, and decides why not bring her home and take care of her himself without telling his wife and his kid. Yeah, Jenifer physically looks creepy, and she acts strange as well, and eventually the wife and kid will leave, and now he's on his own with Jenifer, and his life has just kind of changed and is now in this completely different direction. I won't spoil much beyond this point, but I will say two things. One, violence and horror will obviously ensue. I mean, that's a given. We're watching Masters of Horror. But two, it also does turn into a kind of sexual relationship, and that's where we open a ton of questions, I mean, the obvious thing with Jenifer is most of her body looks completely normal and beautiful, but it's when we get to that disfigured face that makes her so striking and strange, and of course we will get some crude comments from other characters, but she doesn't talk, and in turn you really don't know what her mental state is, and in turn could she even consent to this? She is initiating, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't go down this route, and you do start to think about, like, why would you do this? Why would you go down this path? Why, it's a strange decision to enter into this kind of relationship. And in regard to her mental fortitude, you do wonder how much she knows, how much she perceives. Is she like a wild animal or a force of nature? Or does she know what she's doing, and is she reacting to certain things in certain ways? What mental capacity does she have? And also, what's keeping them together? Because really, super early on, like, it's never a question. He could take her back to the asylum, and there are several points where he really should have, but he does hang on to her. He does keep her, even though, like, yeah, the asylum does suck. It's a bad place. But they can give her round-the-clock care and observation and restraint, and she probably does need that. So there's all these questions floating in the air, and you start to wonder, what are they going for? What is this trying to mean, And you start to compare it to, like, sometimes you see someone's life and you look at it from an outside perspective, and you wonder, wow, so-and-so is clearly tearing their life apart, and that's not really worth it. He should give that up and fix his life. Is it like that? Is it maybe about how he thinks he's being the hero and, saving this poor, disfigured woman, when in reality maybe he's not the hero, maybe he's the victim? Is it analyzing the roles like that? Maybe it's talking just about the cycles of, like, addiction, maybe, He had his life going pretty well, but once he gets Jenifer, I mean, he gets scratched by Jenifer, almost like an injection, like a drug or something, and maybe it's about addiction and having your life taken over by something you can't give up yourself. There's a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to ask, and I really don't know where exactly we're going for, and I think that a lot of people could talk about it. As it stands now, it is a quite bizarre episode, and there is something there that keeps me thinking about it, that keeps me wondering, and when it does get imperfect, when it does get strange, when it does get bizarre, that kind of adds to the weird nature of it. So I don't know if I'm a huge fan of it, but it is something that is definitely occupying my mind for a while, so I don't really know what to think of this one. It is strange, and it is probably one of the better episodes of the show, and one of the better things that Argento did later in his career, so go check it out and see what you make of it. I'd be curious what that is. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Masters of Horror playlist. I've covered about half of Season 1, and I really need to get this season finished at least. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.